Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to play with making rust with our watercolors. And I had a lot of requests for this because I posted this on Instagram, part of my World Watercolor Month painting extravaganza, I guess. This was for the prompt textured, and I had taken a photo of the kind of chain link area with this little kind of lock over at the ball field, and I had a lot of people request a demo on doing rust. So I'm gonna kind of show you what I do to get this rusty effect, and hopefully it will help you when you are painting stuff like that. So you can either sketch on the pencil, or you can use like a regular pencil, or you can use a color erase pencil. I think I'll probably just use I'll use a regular graphite pencil, and I'll use it a little bit darker just so you can see. This is actually a 4B. It's a woodless pencil, but you know, I wouldn't draw this dark, except I am going to be demonstrating here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just, I'm going to do a couple little drawings. The first one is going to just be like a chain link. So what I want you to do is start by drawing a rectangle, or a piece of chain rather, I mean. So draw a rectangle, and then you're going to round the corners of it. Okay, then you're going to double up your lines. Like that. Okay. I'm going to put a seam in there and give it a little bit of bump where the seam is to make it look a little more realistic. Alright, then what we're going to do is we're just going to do like about the same length. We're just going to make a tube. Now, when you do this, you got to account for the thickness here. So you're going to come in about as thick as that is. Okay. And then I'm just going to do an eyeball here. That's just about right. And then we'll do another one. This one will have tipped a little bit, so we'll do this one coming down at an angle, and that way we'll be able to see a little bit of the opposite side. Come to it right about here. So I mean, this is just for fun. I'm not really going to worry about this. This is just a fun little demo. Draw a little seam in there because I like to have those little details are what makes things look realistic. Then I will simply just clean up a little bit right here. Now this is, like I mentioned, a 4B pencil, so I'm going to try not to smudge it. Somebody asked me how do I avoid smudging when using graphite. I think I just use really light lines. You can also roll like a kneaded eraser over your drawing before you begin painting, and that will remove some of the excess graphite. You could even do another part of a chain here if you want to. Just remember to account for the extra length. We should probably start it over here a little bit more actually. I'm going to have a few different examples going because we'll have to let things dry. There we go. I'm just going to brush off the crumbs. And honestly, if it smears a little bit into your painting, I really wouldn't worry about it. Now the other thing I think would be kind of fun is maybe do a padlock. And you can just look around your home, look around your town, and just snap photos of things you find interesting. This padlock is actually from Unsplash. I'm going to start with a kind of a U shape. I'm going to double it up. I'm working on Arches paper, so it's a little bit rough. You don't have to work on a paper this rough. Now the loop that it's going around it's going to be snug up tight to the top. I'm going to go back. I guess I didn't mean to do a drawing tutorial, but you gotta have something to practice on. I hope you get your paints out. Actually, yeah, why don't you pause the video and get your paint out and do this with me, because watching it is fine and dandy, but actually doing it is going to give you a lot more practical knowledge here. This little lock plate in, and there's like a little loop on the end of that there. add a hinge here. Hinges are kind of fun. I mean, you could just stop at chains if you just want to have something to practice on, but I just know from painting that it's going to stay wet for a while, so I want to have something else to work on while we're doing that. Alright, so the bottom of the lock, I have a rectangle. I see a little bit of the side of that there. We're going to see where this comes in. It's just got a little bevel. That's what that is. Alright, if you want to just kind of go in and clean up any of your lines, you can do that. Or you can leave them messy. It really doesn't matter too much. I just don't want it to be confusing if you're trying to watch this. Alright, so we've got a couple examples that we are going to work on. Brush my crumbs. Alright, so I'm working with a limited palette. This is a palette I used for this. This is my Winsor Newton Bijou box, and these are the colors that came in it. I have topped some of them off over the years, but it's pretty much the same. So what we have is lemon, Winsor lemon. We've got yellow ochre, we've got phthalo green, we've got phthalo blue. I think they call them intense green and intense blue if you're in the Winsor Newton family. We have ultramarine blue, we have burnt sienna, we have scarlet lake, and we have permanent rose. And I actually did use all those colors. So what we're going to use mostly, and what we're going to start off with, is ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. This is a nice little limited palette, I have to say. Now we'll take some of that color, bring it over here, and I'm going to add some permanent rose to it. Actually, I'll do some permanent rose and some intense green, the phthalo green, and that will give me a really nice super dark shadow, like where I want to go in and do those really dark shadows. And it's more of a staining color too, so it won't be lifted. So if I want to use that color, say there's an area I want to be really dark and I don't want to worry about it lifting up on me, I can go in there right now and I can go in and put those really dark, look, it almost looks like ink. But because permanent rose is somewhat staining, I believe that's a quinacridone based rose, but there's no pigment information on the pan, so I'm just guessing there about what it looks like. And it's got a phthalo green in it, which is extremely staining. I can go in and I can put these really dark shadows in and let them dry. I'm going to do that down here because I don't have any really dark areas up there. Let's see. And the shadows are what really sculpts the shape. So it's nice to get those in. I'm using a number 10 Mimic round. These are wonderful. I don't know if they're available all over the world, but you can get them at Jerry's Artorama, or you can get them on Amazon in the United States. It's sold by Jerry's Artorama, so it's the same plate. It's the same seller either way. But those are the brushes we use in my watercolor signature sets through Jerry's, because you can't beat them. They allow me to keep the sets at a reasonable price, and they're just wonderful. I've been using them since I discovered them a few years ago, and I pretty much use them every day. I have a set upstairs on my play art desk, and I've got a set down here. They are indispensable. Now, a lot of people think with watercolor you have to paint from light to dark, but you have to reserve your whites if you don't want to use white paint, but you don't have to paint from light to dark. And I would actually encourage you to go in, if you know you have some really dark spots, go in there and get those darker values in, because if you start puttering around with just your lighter colors, it can be very difficult to be brave and go in with the darker colors. So I like to get my darks in pretty close to the beginning, just to avoid having that that kind of fear at the end where when you don't want to go in and put those darker colors because you're like, oh, I don't want to wreck it. It looks so good, but I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up. And that's honestly when I'm working with my students over in Critique Club, because they'll upload their pictures for me to see, that's usually the adjustment they need to do. They need to go darker. They need to go in a little bit darker. And it's kind of scary, and I get that. So it's just something to kind of think of. Now, there's going to be a shadow. Now, this right here, and actually I think I want to put this in a little vignette. And by that, I just mean I want to give it a little bit of a like a sense of place. So again, I'm going to use my my intense green, which is phthalo green, and my permanent rose. You could use any cool red and any cool green. Phthalo green is really great because it's pretty light fast, and it is it's a staining color, which means wherever you put this down, it's not going to come up when you go over it with another color within reason. You know, if you go scrubbing at it, you know, some of it will come up, but it's still going to stain the paper. So I like to use that sort of quality when I am trying to get something that I can kind of keep, a dark that I can keep, and I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about it mixing in with my above layers. And if you could also use like if you had Inktense products, you could use like an Inktense darker color if you wanted to do that and make sure it wouldn't lift. That would work really well too. So another thing I want to do, and I'm just leaving that kind of choppy at the top and bottom, because when you're doing a vignette, you don't really have, you have kind of soft borders. Now I want to put a little bit of a shadow underneath my lock here, and I'm going to do a little bit of a shadow underneath my hasp, which I already have the shadow under the hasp, but I think I want to soften it a little bit. So I'm going to see if I can add to it and soften it before it dries. I love how the colors split too when you add some water to them. So I'm going to soften that. This is a really great little palette, and I'll try to remember to write down those colors again just so you don't have to rewind in the video description. I don't think I have the shape of this quite right. There we go. I think that's a little bit better. There's a pen called an Elegant Writer that you can do, you can draw with, and you can add water to it, and the colors split to green and pink like this. It's kind of, when you add water to it, it's pretty. But I think they would lift on you if you did it for an underpainting. I think you would have issues with it splitting, with it like lifting when you don't want it to. Okay, and I know this is actually going to be a weathered wood in the background, so I think I will go ahead with a credit card scraper and just kind of like scratching some texture there. I know that's a little scary too, but again, hey, you do it at the beginning. What have you got to lose, right? And this is just like a page of my sketchbook, so I'm not worried about that at all. You can take a little bit of blue and the brown mix. Oh, that's a little too much brown. I'm just basically remixing that color. I guess I didn't need to do that. Some of that would be pretty in the background as well, I think. I'm just going to flick it up, just give it a little bit of ambiance. All right, so now we can let that dry. Maybe I'll put a little bit more of the green pink mixture above it just to set it off from the wall a little bit there, the door, weathered door, and also go in with a little bit of my texture. So many great ways to add texture into your watercolors. When you do scrape though, that is leaving a permanent texture on the paper, not just a visual one, so anything you do on top of that will be will be shown. So, you know, you'll never get rid of those scrapes in your paper if you do that. So just keep that in mind. It is a permanent, it's a permanent thing. So the next thing I want to do is, let's do just a wash of a granulating gray on the, on our chain link here. So again, we mixed our ultramarine blue and our burnt sienna. We have quite a bit of it now because I just mixed it twice. And I'm going to go and make sure it's really neutral to a little bit cool, so you'd have a higher proportion of blue, or that you let the blue just kind of, you'd want to make sure it leaned a little more blue than a little more brown. And then you can either wet the paper first, or you can just go in. Since this is pretty small, I just go in and just paint it with a juicy brush. If you had a lot to do, you could wet it beforehand and then go in. And just do this. This is artist paper, so it's really nice to work on, but feel free to just work in your sketchbook. Don't get, you know, fussy or precious about this. I want you to have fun learning how to paint rust. I don't want you to be all like, this is a masterpiece and I need to make it beautiful. We're just doing a few examples here. I have no idea how long this video is going to take. Hopefully you stick around for it, and I hope you find it useful. It's going to take as long as it needs to take, basically. And not a second more. Well, I don't know, I get pretty wordy, so it might be a second more, but we'll see what we can do. Look at my audience retention rates, everybody will be gone like minute 6. I guess that's how long this needed to be. That's a good way to tell, I suppose. But it only tells you after the fact. Alright, so we've got a good base here. Now, when you're working on the wet paper, now what I want to do is I do want to, like, if I see any puddles, just kind of pick them up. I've just wet my brush, dried my brush on my rag here, and I'll just blot it. Now, when I'm looking at rust, a lot of times I'll see like a dark area, and then I'll see the gray, then I'll see a dark area, then I see the bit of the brown rust coming through, kind of like, most of these things have been galvanized, but they eventually, that breaks down, or whatever coating they put on it breaks down, and you end up, the weathering does end up getting through. Or with like this, with a door, it's so many things go in and out of it that it's scraped, it's worn, and then the rust is able to start building on the unprotected metal. So just think of it when you're looking at rusty things. What would it, like here, see how this chain is really rusty and over here it's not so much? This is like a really tightly packed bundle of chain and wire. So water, it rains, water sits here and just sits and sits and sits and sits for a day after a rainstorm, so it can get in there and work. Where down here, and on these side pieces, it just slides off, you know. So the more water can sit on an area, the more you're going to have that rusty effect. So think about that when you are painting. What would have the most rusty effect? Because sometimes you'll have something that's more pristine and you want it to have more of a rusty look. So I'm going to start off with ultramarine blue. I'm going to grab some burnt sienna. That burnt sienna re-wets really well. I actually think that might be Da Vinci burnt sienna that I topped that off with. A little more blue there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find an area which I think might have been touched by the rust a little bit. So I'm just going to go in here and into the wet paint. I'm going to give it a little swipe of that darker color. And maybe I'll do that around the seam here of that chain. And maybe a little bit on the side there. And look at, already we're getting some dimension here just by adding those other colors. I think a lot of times we just make things too difficult, and if we just step back a little bit and thought about it, it wouldn't be that bad. Okay, so there we've already got a layer of dimension. The next thing I'm going to do, clean our brush, dry it off. So as you start layering up like this, you want your brush to be drier because you don't want to incorporate more water or you're going to get blossoms and back runs. So I'm just going in with my dry brush, and I've picked up some burnt sienna. I'm not sure if you can see that on my brush, but I can see it pretty good. And it's kind of pasty, and that's what you want, this kind of pasty paint. And then in the middle of any of those areas where you did the dark gray, or even on the edge up here, because that would be like the middle of it would be up top, you want to go in with that color. And because you have a pasty consistency, it shouldn't bleed out too much. It's going to give you a soft edge, which is what you want. You want that kind of natural soft edge, but it shouldn't give you, it shouldn't run out of control. Like if I put this See, it's pretty much staying where I want it to be. I'm putting it kind of on that seam there. And of course, it's not going to bleed outside of the chain because that's dry. And if you want to work it out a little bit more, you can do that. Now, another thing you can do to enhance the rusty texture is to use colored pencil after it's all dry. So you always have that ability later on to go in and add some patina or add, you know, something else that you want in the picture. So don't feel like you're stuck. Now, the next color I want to add into this rust, and I'm going to do it the same way, is yellow ochre. So my brush is, I'm going to have to get a little wet because I don't think I have used the yellow ochre yet today. But again, I'm going to pick it up straight from the pan. And it's going to be very, very thick and somewhat pasty. Now, if you're using professional watercolors, you don't need to go by the tube. Any of them dried down will be fine. You can get enough color going into the dry colors. If you're using a student grade paint, you may need to go in with a wet paint. You might want to use it fresh from the tube if you have tubes. Now I'm going in and adding some yellow ochre in here. Now, another thing you can add, if you want to give it like kind of a patina look, is you can make like a little bit of a green color. Now, what I have here is I can use lemon, I can use yellow ochre, and I can use the intense green. And then let me do a little of the intense green and the intense blue, which is phthalo blue and phthalo green. And I can let's add a little bit of that here and there. You know, that just gives you that kind of patina color. You can even add purples in it. You can take your rose, your permanent rose. You can take a little bit of ultramarine blue or phthalo blue. It really doesn't matter. You can use either one. Don't want it juicy though. You want to load up your brush but not have it too juicy. And you can throw that in there, here and there if you want kind of a colorful rust, because that purple will make sense with the metal. If you're doing a painting that has a lot of this rust, then you probably won't even need to, like a lot of chain link, you probably wouldn't need to do more detail than that, because it's going to, you know, it's all together, it'll look good, but we're going to let that dry and then we'll do a little bit more to that. So down here we've got this, we've got a rusty padlock. I think that I do need to alter my drawing a little bit though. I'm looking at this and I think that's a little bit too tall. So I just need to take away that, I'm going to see if I have my kneaded eraser. I usually don't like to use kneaded erasers. Oh shit, I don't see it. On watercolor paper, I'm afraid it's going to leave oils. There. Didn't want to smear my hands across the paper. So let's see. Here we're going to do some kind of brass color, some brass rust, and I'm going to start off. I'm going to actually wet it first. Oops, I got off the edge. Now the paint's only going to go where the paper's wet, so the paper's a little damp on the outside. I'm just going to charge ahead, but try to leave a little sliver of a gap there before I should just stop and dry this actually. You know what? I'm actually going to stop and dry this with my heat tool and then come back so I don't end up with a feathered mess. So you can do that too, a hair dryer or a heat tool. Dry up your paper so you don't have your color wicking away where you don't want it. Okay, I've dried the paper and now I'm going to go again and wet the padlock here. Just the bottom brass part. I'm not doing the loop yet, but I am going to go over the shadow area. Now you can see it does lift a little bit, but nothing too horrendous, and it's not going to create a problem because we're going in with some pretty strong color here. Now another way to keep your watercolors lively is to do your mixing on the paper more than on your palette. So I'm going to pick up some yellow ochre and just kind of throw it in like that. I'm going to pick up some burnt sienna, throw it in up there where it is a little bit more rusty. And it's automatically going to give you some really interesting textures just without you even doing any of the work, which is very helpful. I'm going to carry the burnt sienna over the edge. Because we wet the paper too, it's going to help it move and do some of that work for us as well. Now I see some green in here. I'm going to pick up some of that green that I did make on the palette already. I'm going to throw that in. That kind of like a tarnish. You know how brass things get kind of tarnished? That's what we're seeing there. I like this green in this palette, the phthalo green, because it's really transparent, really pure, and you can add like yellow ochre to it to get an olivey or sap green. You can add lemon yellow to it to get a really bright like a spring green or grass green. You can add lemon yellow or cadmium yellow and a little bit of red to it to get a sap green. There's a lot you can do to that. So I'm just pulling in some of this really kind of muted. I don't want to use that straight onto the paper though. That color is so intense that that would be a little strong to go right onto the paper with that. But as far as just kind of throwing in some tarnish, that works really well. Let's see, I'm going to grab a little burnt sienna and the ultramarine blue mix there, so it's a little bit darker. Add that up here. Define my edges that got a little bit smooshy. And darken up the back side of the hasp where it is really shadowed. Looking for like rusty objects have a lot of contrast, a lot of shadows will be really helpful because it makes it more interesting and it helps you define the shapes. When you sometimes you end up when you have rusty stuff, everything just looks very similar because you've got a lot of just that same kind of rusty color and it can get kind of confusing. If you have a little bit of shape to it, then it's really helpful. I'm going to give this a little bit more curve. There we go. I love to work like this. It's kind of like you started with a really basic sketch and then you're just kind of building it up as you go. I think that's a lot of fun. I hope you're painting along. Oh, feel free to slow me down, speed me up, pause me, whatever you need to do while you're working here so that you have a good experience. Okay, so now up here, we've got a variety of kind of like pocked and mottled rust. It looks like it's a painted metal that has gone really rusty. For that, I am also going to start by pre-wetting it. I'm going to clean my brush off. And I'm just going to go ahead and wet this whole area. I want to treat it as one piece. Well, it is one piece, but I want to treat it together because it's the same type of material. You've got some sort of metal that's been painted, but it's weathered because it's been outside, and then it's had the same kind of rust all over it. So we want to make sure we treat it the same, and then we can paint it a little bit differently than how we painted the brass. Don't worry about your paint lifting a little bit. In fact, I kind of want to scrub that a bit because I feel like I need to redefine my shape there, and I'm going to do that with a pasty burnt sienna paint. Go in between the legs of the hasp as well, which will end up being really dark. I'm also going to wet that shadow there just so it's... I can't really see what's going on in there, so I want to make sure that I got something in there. All right, I'm going to start in with the burnt sienna. Oh, I think I'll use some scarlet. Let's use some scarlet, which is going to be, I think, too bright on its own, but we'll tap a little in there. We'll see. That's really bright, but that's okay. It's nice and contrasty. Also, I find when I'm painting ordinary things, it looks good if you exaggerate. You exaggerate the color. I'm going to grab some lemon. It doesn't have to be lemon, doesn't have to be scarlet. You could have like teals in here. Like if you had cobalt teal on your palette, that would be great to use because it's a granulating, kind of more opaque color with a lot of body to it. And colors like that work really well in a situation like this, but I don't have that on this palette. So if I were to make like the color of a teal with my my phthalo green and phthalo blue, it would just be too runny to get the effect that I wanted to get. Now I'm going to go in with some burnt sienna pasty. And I am going to kind of tap on these rust spots. Tap, tap, tap. So this is a little wet, so the little rust spots are blurring a little bit. I'm not going to worry about that. This will help you learn to control how wet you need your paper to be. I'm also going to tap some up here. And a lot of times I tap first in the areas that I want blending, and then I tap less in the areas where I want it to be more, defined. This is fun. I hope you're enjoying this. I had so many requests for rust. I'm like, oh, this will be fun. Tap, tap, tap. Now in here, don't forget about this. That I'm actually just going to paint in because you're not really going to see much of that. It's just so shadowed. In fact, I'll just pick up a little bit of the burnt sienna and burnt sienna ultramarine blue mix so that I can just kind of keep that really dark in there. Oh goodness. Ah. I did not mean to do that, but I think it'll be fine. Okay, here we've got this this part that's coming out here. It's like a little decorative pole, it looks like. It's just like a little, looks like a little whirligig, kind of. Not whirligig, but it almost looks like just a little decorative, I don't know, pull. It's like a little swirl on the end. I'm just going to indicate that because I really don't know too much about what's going on there because it's not very detailed in the photo I'm looking at. And it's very shadowy. I'm tapping on more now that I know that it's starting to dry, so I'm going to have a little bit more definition. Now honestly this should go further out because I totally, this hinge would go like that. So I'll have to, I got a little carried away with my weathered wood there. But I can tend to that in a bit. I just wanted to just make a little note of it while I was thinking of it. Sometimes you forget things and then you're doing your painting and you completely forgot you meant to go back to something and then you don't realize it till after you've like put it away and you've forgotten what colors you've used, and then you go back and you're looking at your sketchbook and you're like, oh wait a minute, something's not, I meant to go back to that, and you become eye blind to it while you're working on it, but then you come back, when you see it like a few days later, you're like, oh shoot, I forgot to do that, and then maybe you don't feel like getting your paints out or whatever. All right. The nice thing about having a lot of color on there is if you want to go over with like a white colored pencil or you want to dry brush over it with some white gouache, you'll have all that contrast there to give you the nice texture. Okay, so what did we use? We had some lemon yellow in there. I just painted this like 2 minutes ago and I can already forget what I put in there. That seems a little bright, but look at the burnt sienna. I don't necessarily clean my brush off between colors when I'm doing this because I'm using it so dry that it's usually whatever's last on my brush is what's there. Okay, I'm gonna let this dry before I move on, but I've done everything I want to do in this layer, and just a lot of patience, a lot of letting things dry, and kind of a lot of puttering around. So we'll see you back here in a minute. All right, we're going to move right along. We're going to make sure we get a coat of paint on everything, and we are going to do this loop and the hasp. They're pretty much the same material, it looks like, so we should be able to paint them pretty much together. I'm going to do burnt sienna, and a lot of times when I'm doing rust, I should have put a little stickum under this, so because it keeps wanting to dance around on me. I can just go in and grab any of my grime, basically, and use that for a base coat. And I'm actually going to do this like we did our chain link, and do it all as one. I'm going to go over my shadow there. Now I will have to go in and fill in some areas where I redid my drawing. Oh, see, I can, and because the burnt siennas and ultramarine blues that we're using, they're very easy to lift. They're sedimentary colors. They sit on the paper. They don't absorb into the paper. So like the colors, the permanent rose and phthalo green we used at the beginning for that shadow, those are staining colors, but the ultramarine blue and burnt sienna are sedimentary colors. So they sediment out on top, they granulate, they're very easy to lift. Okay. I'm gonna put that in there too right now, just because I don't want white paper there. I'm gonna wipe my brush off. I'm gonna go in with some burnt sienna. Real pasty. I'm just gonna go in and add some of that rusty color. I'm going to add some in here, get that shape. Remember, we can still control wet and wet as long as we're not using really, really wet paint. It's only going to go so far. It'll feather out, but it won't go bananas on us. Now again, clean, blot, and I'm going to go in and get some yellow ochre. I only want enough paint on my brush to be able to get a lot of paint, but I don't want so much that I'm going to end up, and I want to make sure there's no water on my ferrule. I don't want to get so much paint, so much water on there that it's all going to flow and make a mess. I just want enough that I can pick up paint, because I like to do this wet and wet because it gives me that gorgeous texture that I want. See how thick it is? It stays put when it's that thick. So I can also take some of this color, since I have it on my brush and I don't want to waste it, and I can go in and I can add it spots where I want it in here. This is really thick actually. It's probably a little too thick, but if there's anything I need to redefine, I can do that as well. I'm dry brushing here, which gives me some nice texture. And kind of get a little bit of that that loop-de-loop shape that we have discussed, and you can't really tell can't tell what it is. That shape, you remember that? We can work on that. And I can even kind of throw in a little bit over here, although I don't want to cover over this too much because I really like what's going on over here. Just a little bit. There. Okay. And I think I'm going to go in with a smaller brush. I'm going to use a synthetic. When you're using a smaller brush like this, and you're working with pretty thick paint on really textured paper, using a brush that's a little bit firmer, like a Golden Taklon brush. This is just one that came in a watercolor set that I reviewed probably about a month ago, maybe longer, maybe 2 months ago, from the company Pagos. The brushes in that set were fantastic. They were Golden Taklon. They weren't like anything super expensive or anything, but they were just wonderful for doing details and whatnot. So oops, that's not the blue I want. Get some ultramarine blue here. Ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, kind of thick though. Golden Taklon brushes don't hold as much water, and so when you're mixing paint, they let you keep the paint nice and dark. So see how that's kind of like the texture of like cream? It's not like it's thicker than milk, it's kind of like half and half. That's what we want. Again, you want to check for any drops of water on the ferrule. And now we're going to go in and we are going to start doing some of the detail texture here. And don't worry, we're going to get back to that chain link in a bit. We're just going to do this for now. I wanted to make sure I had stuff to do while things were drying and give you a couple different situations, a couple different types of metal. Like this is something that's more irony and brass, and that's something that's more like a galvanized or stainless steel type. I guess galvanized, not really stainless, because stainless shouldn't rust, but... And so stippling for texture. For this passive texture, if we had to stipple every little dab of texture, that would be just mind-numbingly boring. That's why we want to let some of the granulation in the paint do the work. We want to let some of the colors kind of blend and mix and give us some of the softer textures in wet and wet. Plus we want that variety of different crispness and softness in our rust so it looks natural and realistic and not like somebody just tried to paint some rust. We use the texture of the paper, we use the texture of our brushes, we use the texture of our paint. We use all of those things we have at our disposal to create. And this also, this mixture, this thick mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna is very dark, so we can go in and put some of those darker values in. It's also very liftable, so if we make a mistake or we hate it, we can go in and lift it out later. Let me get that shadow in there. And a lot of it's not even so much its shadow, it's a lot of it is just the darker metal, just the iron, you know, the iron that isn't rusted. I think some of that dark at the bottom of the padlock loop area, and some of this underneath the loop from the hasp. And again, I've got this pretty thick and pasty, so it's not going bananas when it hits the damp paper. It's gonna, it might soften a little bit, but it's not gonna go crazy. And it looks really dark right now, and it will till we go in and we add some of our color pencil. You could use gouache if you want to. You could go through, I wouldn't use masking fluid because I think masking fluid would look very unnatural, but you could go through and add wax, but you're limited. If you go in and you use wax at the beginning to preserve your white areas, because it will give you beautiful texture because it's going to pick up the texture of the paper. If you go in though and you do wax at the beginning, then you can't put paint there afterwards. It's going to be permanently taken up. You know, it's going to be permanently resistant, so you won't be able to go on top of that. And I just think masking fluid looks too fake looking. I can dry brush, see with the edge of this golden Taklon brush, and get a little texture that way too. It's a nice way to do that. All right, I'm also going to go in and mix some more of the phthalo green and the permanent rose. I need to top these paints up. I've got the divots. I've got the round brush divots. It's hard not to though. These little half pans. It's not like you can fit a bigger brush in there, so you end up getting those little divots. Okay, so I'm going to go in. This is kind of almost like a really, really dark purple looking color. I'm going to redefine the shadow here. got a really dark joining like line where the two pieces of chain, of wire, of whatever we'll call it, metal, kind of hooked together, so there it's really dark where they touch. So I want to get that dark shadow in. Don't be afraid of contrast and those dark shadows, because that is that's what will make or break a picture. I don't care if it softens out a little bit, if I go next to that hasp area and it softens it, because it's going into the darkness and you're not able to see those details. So it would make sense that that would get a little softer as it gets into the darkness and you can't see those details anymore. I can also use this for my super dark areas over here, and I'm going to stipple so I can keep some of that rusty texture and that weathered texture. Gosh, I thought this was going to be the quickest tutorial. I hope it's useful, and I hope you're finding this. I hope you're painting along and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Because this is definitely a, you know, paint after me type video. I'm hoping this is looking... It's really dark right now, so if this looks really dark in here, it is really dark. It's going to be dark until I go in with some colored pencil. See how the dark shadows really just, you need it. You need it for the contrast. And it's really going to look fabulous when we put our lights on there. Okay, we're going to let that dry. And we're going to move up to our chain link friends up here. And we're going to also use that that watercolor that we made with the green and the pink. In fact, I'm going to turn this around because I'm afraid that I'm going to set my hand in the oh, if I do that, I'm going to have to remember what's right side up and what's upside down, or I'll have, well, if I have it upside down, it's only my sketchbook, I'm not going to worry about it. So the first thing I want to do, and this is kind of imaginary chain link because I just kind of sketched it out. Oh, got too much paint on there. I am going to add some dark on the inside of this bit of chain, and I'm going to bring just a sliver of line where it meets the other chain. Now keep in mind I'm painting this upside down. So I'll just put kind of an interior shadow. This, you know what, I've got to turn this around because I'm going to start painting it like it's right set up. So I would imagine to be a strong shadow underneath here. So I'm just going to go put a really dark shadow. I got to mix that a little bit thicker. It's too watery, and I'm going to have feathered edges. Okay. I'm going to add kind of a dark shadow, just tracing the bottom edge of that chain, and I'm going to go just along the bottom edge here. Now, if you have a reference photo, you know, follow it. It'll be a little easier than just kind of trying to make it up as you go along. But I did post the reference photo for this other picture there on my Instagram page. You just swipe, and it'll be after that. I think I want to have a little seam on that one too. Have a shadow cast by that. We'd have a shadow on the bottom side there. And your shadows will follow the contour of whatever it's casting upon, so it'll take whatever is casting the shadow, but also whatever it's casting upon. So make sure your shadows like curve around the shape of whatever is getting shaded. See, that's curving around the the chains are cylindrical wire, so it's curving around that cylindrical wire. I'll put the seam on the back side of that one. And I want a little definition right there. And it probably would be a little bit of a shadow from that top portion of chain. And also with your shadows, you can kind of refine edges. If you got a wonky looking edge, you can use that shadow. Since it's darker, you can push it out if you need to. And you actually can scrub back if you need to on some of these shadows too, because you've got you're using sedimentary colors for the most part. And I can just kind of dry brush a little texture in if I want to anywhere. So when I dry brush, I don't have a ton of paint on my brush, and I'm just kind of using the brush sideways and just kind of scribbling, and it's just kind of just grabbing some of that texture. All right, so I think for the bottom we're pretty much done on what we need for paint. I'm going to blast this really quick with my hair dryer, my heat tool. Never use your heat tool as a hair dryer, or that would be a very sad day for you, because you would not be happy. Now I'm not going to really mess with the weathered wood in the background. You could definitely play with that, add some paint, add some, you know, some creases and whatever. I'm not going to bother with that, but you can. I'm going to start in with this eggshell. Any sort of cream colored pencil will work great, and I'm going to go in and throw the highlight on here. I'm going to turn my pencil frequently as I do any of this stuff, because it's going to wear down almost like sandpaper on this arches, because it's really rough. It's really rough paper. Even the cold press is really rough. Their rough paper is super rough, but their hot press is like ice skates rink smooth. It's so smooth that it's too smooth. I like for hot press paper, I actually like the Paul Rubens hot press, because it's just got enough tooth, in my opinion anyway. I really like that hot press paper. I also like the Fluid 100 hot press paper. The arches just seems really too smooth to me. Now see how that just already just pulls things out. Let's see, this one's called Sand or Sable. Oh, it's funny. I think it used to be called Sable in the old sets, and I think they say sand and sable, so I'm wondering if sable is the French word for sand. Because they have English and French, I believe. I don't really pay much attention because they have metallic writing, and I have a really hard time reading that. I don't go in with a white right away unless it's the only color I have. I like to build up a few other colors, and I just kind of go in and scribble. Because look at all the contrast we're getting just from that kind of ochre-y color. And you don't need to do a lot. That's great for getting those edges. Especially on a rough paper. I definitely would do rust on a rough paper. Now on our little chain link here, I can do a little bit, highlighting the rusty area. I'm going to try not to go over the shadows, just because they're probably still wet, because I didn't pay attention. I didn't make a point to. Dry the top part of the picture. Now another thing I like to do is go into like a seafoamy color green. This color is called light green, but it's kind of, you know, that mint color. And I like to add that. This is in my reference photo. I just really like to add these colors in. You could even go in as far as like a turquoise. But this is the thing, you know, as you notice and you paint more rusty objects, now the rust that's near the ocean, you get a lot more of the patina, the coppery colors, your greens, your blues. It must be have to do with the salts in the water. The salts must turn, that's the only thing I think, the salts must turn the colors a little bit because you get a lot more of the green patinas in nautical. You certainly don't need to add that much, but I like it, so why not? Next, I am going to go in with a rusty color. This might be pumpkin. Oh, lordy. Mineral orange. Oh my gosh, guys. I gotta get my eyes checked. I'm gonna add this. This is a really good, it's just a little bit lighter than a burnt sienna. Probably could use a pumpkin. I don't think it's quite rusty. I don't think it's quite red enough actually to do our rust. In fact, let's try something like, oh, what's this one? This one actually might be burnt sienna. Nope, this one's pumpkin orange. And when you are, if you're doing a smoother piece of metal that's not quite as rusty, make sure you go in the direction of the metal. I really want to get that rust enhanced up here and on the corners. One of the places where water would sit is going to be the most, it's going to have the strongest amount of rust. You don't have to do the colored pencil. I want to stress that if you don't want to, use a little wax in the lighter areas to begin with, or go easier on the color. Like I went really light with my first wash here, and then I just built up a little bit because I was doing kind of a scene with a lot of different things. I'm going to go in with a dark brown. And wouldn't you know, it's actually called dark brown. Probably won't need this too much. And just to refine some shapes. I don't think I need it up there at all. I'm using a new pencil sharpener. I like it quite a bit. And I've been using it for over a week on the same charge. It's rechargeable. And when I was thinking, anytime I see a rechargeable something, I'm like, I usually don't buy rechargeable stuff. But it was sent to me for review. And it has been a champ. It is holding a charge really well, and it's not wimping out on me, so I'm pretty impressed with that. It's Office World. I'll try to remember to link it up, but I've used it with my Prismacolors even, which that's the test right there. Can it handle a Prismacolor without grinding to a halt? Now I'm going to go in with a white, and then we'll finish up with some black, and you know, I think that's pretty much going to be all we'll need to do. So this is the brightest point. Oops. You can't sharpen those Prismacolors too sharp or they will do that. Do a little bit of highlight right on. A little bit right there. Now this will serve purpose of highlighting and also just some of the old paint. I don't want to cover it all up though, so I'm just kind of thinking, where would the paint still survive? And actually dry brushing gouache might be a little bit better for this particular technique, but I don't have my gouache out, so I'm just going to do this. Plus, I think everyone's got colored pencils. Not everyone's going to have gouache. I'm going to do just a sliver of a highlight. You could do that with a gel pen as well. Now, this has a strong highlight on it because it's actually pretty smooth. Although I'm not so sure I got the perspective right on that. But, you know, you're learning how to paint rust, not draw loop-de-loos. I never promised you'd draw loop-de-loos, friends. I'm just going to do some highlights here, just a little follow the contours, just give it a little bit of highlight to shape it. I like my little abstract imaginary chains. And okay. And then last but not least, I got a black pencil. And I always wait to use the black because I might not need it, right? But sometimes you just need that punch because you've gotten everything is kind of dark and moody in this one. And you just need to further develop and further sharpen up some of the areas, so it's handy to have that at the end. And again, I would recommend a Prismacolor. You can purchase open stock Prismacolors, so if you're somebody you're like, I rarely use colored pencils, I don't need a set of 150, I don't need that much, and you probably would like to replace the ones that you have when you run out, Prismacolor's great because you can buy a black, you can buy a white, you can buy the light green, you can buy the, that pumpkin orange. Buy the few colors that you need if you're not somebody that uses colored pencils a lot, and be good to go. And then get used to them. You'll know exactly how they'll behave. That's probably why I grab my Prismacolors, even though I have pencils that are arguably better quality, because they're affordable, they're easy to replace, and I know how they're going to behave. And the black, white, those earth tones, they're going to be pretty light fast in whatever brand you get. And I just prefer the feel of a Prismacolor myself. Not everybody does, I know that, but I do. And at this point, I'm just kind of, frigging around and puttering. You can stop at any moment. You don't have to spend this much time, but boy, it's fun. It's so fun. I hope that you guys comment, I started watching your video at 2 in the afternoon and it's, 10 o'clock and I've been drawing rust all day. I love that stuff. I think that's awesome. I think it's awesome when you, get inspired and you create. That's too much of that color. Some brown and some black. I think that's actually too much pencil on the padlock, but it's there. It's there, and I'm gonna step away. I'm gonna step away. Okay, maybe in a minute. Yeah, I don't take my own advice. I'm gonna do what's fun. Oh, there's a neat little seam right here. A little like mold mark. Gotta get that in there. That looks cool. Any little deviation from perfection is what you want to highlight, I think, in a rusty situation. So good, so fun. Did you like this? Did you have fun? Let's bring it up. You can see a little closer. I'll bring my light over here a little bit closer. That might help you a little bit. So we've got brass, we've got iron, we've got like a kind of a galvanized stainless steely, maybe. Oh, we got painted metal. What more could you want, right? I feel it just needs a little bit more highlight up here now that I'm looking back. I don't feel like I have enough structure up there. You can stipple a bit with colored pencils, but you can also do the gouache, like I mentioned, the dry brushing. That might give you a little bit more. This is a nice rusty yellow color. I just love how you can kind of pull those colors back out with a colored pencil. Even these finicky Prismacolors that do love to shatter. Especially if you sharpen them too pointy. Okay, I need to stop messing with this. I hope you enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun for me, and thank you to everyone that requested the rust tutorial. I hope you found it useful. I hope it lived up to your expectations, your expectations, and also just to compare how long each of these took. I don't know, you can tell me how long the video is. That's how long these took together. This took me, I worked on this for probably an hour and a half, and then for the watercolor portion, and then I came back and did some colored pencil rouging for probably another half an hour. So this was probably 2 hours. And this was how long this video is, because it was real time. So, you know, you can get a little more sophisticated of a look if you put more time in and you really pay attention to your reference images. But I just wanted to kind of get those techniques down for you so you could apply them however you like. And I will try to hunt up other Rust tutorials I've done and put them in the video description. I know I have some in Critique Club, so I must have some time-lapsed on my channel. But anyway, I hope you liked it. Please give me a thumbs up before you go if you did. Share it with a friend. That helps my channel immensely, and I would love to see my watercolor tutorials do better than they've been doing. So your help would mean the world to me. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.